Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Paul Elam with a Voice for Men, and I am with the one and only Steve Brule of Studio Brule fame, the man who captured the true beginning of the online men's movement in the West by getting the feminist protest of Warren Farrell in 2012, and it sort of put his work on the map, and he's been hanging around ever since. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Paul. That's quite an intro there. Thanks.
Oh yeah, well, man, you certainly deserve it. I think that video footage that you got did us all a world of good, and it wasn't very good for feminists,
No, showed them in their true spirit.
which is not very good for feminists.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the deal about them. Anyway, we're not talking about, well, maybe indirectly about feminism tonight. What I want to talk about is the subject keeps coming up over and over again in the more MGTOW end of the modern men's movement, of guys talking about, moving out of culture, and even non-MGTOW guys that are looking for relationships or have discussed, always come up, go to Japan, go to, Korea, go here, go there, go to South America, go to a different culture where they look at men differently, where feminism, the West now, North America, the United States and Canada are both shithole countries, as Donald Trump would put it, when it comes to being infested by feminism. But it's not so much the case in other places, but that doesn't mean that those other places are panaceas or beautiful options all the time. So I had the idea that I wanted to start talking to men with experience, direct experience in different countries. I don't want secondhand information. I want to talk to guys that live this. And I've got a guy lined up soon I'm going to be talking to who lives in the Philippines. But right now, Steve Brule has been spending quite a bit of time in the Dominican Republic, otherwise known as the DR. And let me tell you what I know about the DR from the beginning. I know they make some pretty damn good cigars. I know they're in Hurricane Alley, and I know that Spanish is the national language, or is what most people speak. And that is the beginning and the end of my knowledge about the Dominican Republic. Steve has been talking to me and filling me in on some fascinating history of the place. But I wanted to save my questions along the lines that men would be interested in if they're interested in getting out of the shithole of feminism in the Western world and living somewhere else. And so with that, maybe you could just spend a couple of minutes giving your knee-jerk reaction to the question, Steve, that when I say, tell me about the Dominican Republic, what are the first things that come to your mind?
Well, for me, it's a lot cheaper to live there. Probably half the price of here. And just to get this off the table, that probably doesn't need saying, but I'll say it anyways, is there isn't any utopia. There's no place in the world where you're going to parachute in there and all your problems are going to disappear and, everything's going to be wonderful.
Oh man, we can pull the plug on this talk now. I want utopia, just like feminists.
And on that same line is that I think, for me, so far, being able to go to two places, for instance, is refreshing both times. If I'm in a place, for instance, I spent 6 months or so in the Dominican Republic this last winter. I've been there about 9 months total so far in 3 different visits. But after a while, it's refreshing to change, even if you're coming back to Canada as an example. There is an element of mentally refreshing about that. But
you think that comes from your being away from the familiar all that time?
It could be a lot to do with that. And there are frustrations. I think just if I can project myself in the future a bit, I could see myself wanting to go live between 2 different places, maybe 3 different places, just for that refreshing change. And then when you come back, for the times I've returned to the Dominican after being in Canada a bit, again, it's fresh and new again for me. And it's really exciting to get there again. You know what I mean? But there are a lot of people that have expats that are living there 12 months a year. Some of them I've met have been there for 30, 40 years, and they love it. And they don't want to leave.
What
So,
is it do you think that they love about it? I mean, other than the fact that it's cheaper, which I mean, that's a big plus, that it's half as expensive as you're used to in
right.
Canada.
Yeah,
What
that's a
else?
big one. The weather is really, really nice. It tends to be a bit on the humid side, but not on the whole island, not on the whole country. There is a big mountain range down the center of the country, and on the southwest side of the mountain, it's pretty dry. And I took a motorcycle trip down there with a friend, and you could feel the difference in the lower humidity. And then there are towns in the middle of the island, the middle of the country, which are higher elevation, and the temperature in there and those towns will be around 60 at night and in the daytime maybe 75, 80. You know, example is Jarabacoa and Constanza, two perfectly livable good towns where you can get a much more moderate temperature. The north side of the island and the east and the first part of the south side, where you're going to Santo Domingo, that whole section tends on the coast, and it tends to be hotter and more humid. But as you go into the island, you tend to go up in elevation, and as you go up in elevation, you can feel the temperature cool down. You know, and when we came back from that one motorcycle trip, coming down from Jarabacoa to the highway, which was closer to sea level, there was a point where within about 3 minutes, you could feel the temperature increase again as we went down in elevation. So there's, and this is something a lot of people wouldn't know about the Dominican Republic. There are 4 or 5 different climate zones in that one little space.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And there's even evergreen trees in some of the mountain areas. And there's a desert region. There's subtropical rainforest regions. So it's the third most biologically diverse country in the world.
Had no idea.
After the Galapagos and Costa Rica, with the most unique species. It's number 3. It's way up there. And there's a ton of other interesting things about the Dominican Republic. And if I start to wander and get, you know.
Don't worry, I'll rein you in.
Yeah, and try to get me in a direction here. But one of the things that comes to mind right away is a sense of freedom there. It's way more sense of freedom. Here in Canada especially, and probably a lot of the US as well, we are so bogged down with cultural expectations and laws and rules for everything. You can't hardly turn around and spit without getting slapped with some kind of either reprimand or fine or charge, you know. And I'll probably get in trouble with some people who don't like this, but I think that the West has become far too safety conscious. And they've used, in the West, we use this excuse of safety to justify just about any restriction of freedoms that you can think of. Right now in Canada, I'll give you an example, and again, this will be controversial to some people. Our drinking law here is 0.05% in your blood. If you have 1 pint of beer, 1 pint of beer, okay, you stop at a beer pub on the way home with some buddies, you have 1 drink, you're over the 0.05. Most people will be over the 0.05. I mean, a large guy like you wouldn't be over the 0.05 limit because you just have a large body mass.
Well, I might be close.
You might be close, yeah.
Yeah.
But effectively, it's completely illegal to drink anything when you drive now in Canada. And I can say this has changed my behavior. Like, I don't stop at any pubs when I'm not home anymore. And I only go out to drink if somebody else is driving. And since I've been back to been here for the last 2.5 months, I've had 1 pint of beer in 1 restaurant, and that was one I could walk to from here.
Right.
Okay. Now, you could say this is all for the good. Yeah, there's a safety aspect for it. But you know something? I get on my motorcycle in the Dominican Republic, and if I want to stop and have a couple of beers, I don't even have to worry about it. And I just get back on there and I ride my motorcycle back to the apartment, and I like that. And
so that brings me to a question. What is the relationship like with the general population and the police? I mean, because, you know, sometimes you think of what we like to call banana republics, or sort of a little more primitive countries having a lot of super corrupt police that are actually dangerous to the population.
Well, I think there's something you have to keep an eye on there. You do hear stories. I've heard stories. I haven't experienced that problem, but I've certainly heard the stories, and I suspect that there's truth in maybe not all of those stories. Some of them are maybe exaggerated, but there's some truth to that. And one of the most likely thing that's going to happen to you that you might be uncomfortable with the police is that they're going to stop and ask you for milk money for their kids. You know, they'll ask you, "Oh, I need to buy milk for my baby. Can you have 100 pesos or something?"
So the cops are panhandling.
Yeah, they can't survive otherwise. You know how low their salary is?
Pretty
They
bad.
make almost nothing. And there's several different kinds of police, and that's not to excuse the behavior. Part of that is, um, I'm not an expert in the culture. I'm just going to try and give you what I'm absorbing, and I think, and I keep in mind that I could be wrong in a lot of these details, but it's just what I'm kind of, the sense I'm getting. There's a very, very small number of very, very, very wealthy people in the Dominican Republic. And a lot of people believe that the wealthy of the Dominican Republic don't want the rest of the Dominican Republic they want them to stay poor.
Sure.
They're easy to control. They're easy to manage. There's cheap labor. You can get somebody to work for you for a whole day for 300 pesos. And
Which is about how much American or Canadian?
$6 American.
Okay. So a day's labor for $6 American.
And a day's labor down there is when they tell you to start till when they tell you can go home. And it can be more than 12 hours. You know?
Oh, wow.
And there's always somebody else who needs 300 pesos.
So let me translate that into what I think a lot of guys who might be interested in like a vacation or even looking at the DR as a alternative place to live. What does that say for their ability to hire a maid?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can get a maid for really cheap. Now, keep in mind also is that that everybody you talk to will try to push that up. 300 pesos is about the bottom of the scale, okay? And a lot of people will make 800 pesos. So the bottom of the scale is about 300 pesos. And then it goes up to 1,000 pesos would be a lot, okay? But for instance, I knew a guy who had a woman come in to cook for him and clean his house twice a week, his apartment. He's American. He's from New York City, and he's sold his stuff, and he's fed up with the U.S. And this woman, she tells him what to buy for food. He goes to the grocery, buys all his food, and she comes over twice a week. There's two of them, her and her daughter. They cook up a gigantic storm of food, and they clean his whole house out. And I think he was paying, now they're there probably 3-4 hours twice a week, and he's probably paying her 500 or 600 pesos. So, and it may be up to 1,000, but and here's the other thing. There is a pressure to give more, because you know, and they know, and everybody knows that this is almost slave labor. Okay. Right. So you can't escape that kind of subtle pressure that if you give just 300 pesos, yeah, they're not going to be too happy about it, you know?
Because they know you have it.
They may do it once, twice, but they'll be looking for something else too. If you give them an extra 100 or 200 pesos, they're going to be happy with you, you know? So there is that pressure too.
So what is the attitude in general toward the gringo like?
It's as varied as it is in other countries about foreigners. Like in the U.S., there are people who hate Mexicans, you know, and there are people who hate blacks. There are people who hate whites. There are people who are supportive of Mexicans, supportive of blacks. It's all over the map, and it's no different there. There is an element of that, you know, we just don't like the gringos, or don't want anything to do with the gringos. There's another element of that gringos. You got to take advantage of them whenever you can, because they have so much money, they don't know what to do with it, you know? You'll run into some of that, you know, but I haven't seen it in a dangerous way.
Okay.
And I guess I've had the police ask me 2 or 3 times for money, and it's never been like, if you say no, I can't, I got nothing with me, and you just keep on walking on, they're not going to harass you, you know. Now, if the stories that I've heard where there's serious danger is somebody who becomes very successful and they flaunt it, you know, or is very rich and they flaunt it and they tell people where they live, and they're there for like 2 or 3 years, and the real bad guys, they got ears, right?
Right.
Eventually the really bad guys find out who's who, where's where, where's the rich person, where's the easy target, and they make a plan. Okay. But they're not going to hunt. Even these guys, first of all, I mean, don't advertise that you're rich and where you live and all that stuff and show off, you know. I mean, it's kind of obvious. But where was I going to say?
Well, that's really not that much different than the United States. If you run around flaunting wealth, telling people where you live, eventually the wrong person's going to spot you and you're going to have problems.
Yeah, and the more they know about you, the more they can fine tune a plan how to take advantage of what they know.
Right.
And we're really only talking about a small number of bad actors, just like in every other country of the world. There's every place. There's a small number of dangerous bad actors who just don't give a fuck, and they would just blow your brains out just to get that little thing that they're looking for, whatever they're looking
for. Whatever it is you got.
Yeah.
Tell me this, when it comes to things like medical services, public services, you know, things that you might need, what's that like? I mean, what's the availability of important services that would be important to most men? Like they would like to be able to see a doctor if they need to.
Yeah, I mean, it's very accessible. I mean, it's more accessible than Canada. Now, I would say that because Canada, the wait lines can be really, really long. Even if you have a doctor, sometimes you call up and it's 2 weeks just for a regular appointment. By that time, you probably got over your cold or you died, you know?
Yeah, so more of that free medical care.
Yeah, it's free medical care. And I had a really, really bad cold that started about 6 or 8 weeks ago here. And I eventually went to the emergency room, the emergency hospital here. And there was not even that many people there. And I was there for 4 hours or more than 4 hours. And it was going to be another 4 hours. I left. I had my ears blocked up with infection. I couldn't hardly hear. I was coughing up junk. And I just couldn't take sitting there anymore. And I left. So I don't know. If I have the same thing in Costambar in Dominican Republic, which is outside of Puerto Plata where I live, I can go to the pharmacy myself. I can tell the pharmacist, I need some antibiotic for this, and I'll get it in like 2.5 minutes. The pharmacy is about like, well, by walking, it's 5 minutes from where I stay. And then it's open even on Sundays. So, and the pharmacists, they'll give you everything. You don't need a prescription in the Dominican Republic.
Oh, okay. So you can just go directly to the source for the drugs that you need.
And it makes total sense. You know how many times we've gone to a doctor here, and I know what the doctor is going to give me. I know before I even go there.
And the pharmacist
spend half a freaking day. You know, it's not complicated. You got an infection, you need antibiotics.
What are some other availability of services? Now, talk to me. I'm a spoiled American. I want the cheap prices of the Dominican Republic, but of course, I want a Starbucks around the corner, you know, anytime that I want it. What about the eating establishments, food, thing like that, things that people would think about if they don't want to cook, if they want to go out and eat?
Well, where I stay, there's probably 15 restaurants at least within walking distance. They're all very, very similar. There's not like a huge variety in that section. And in general, there's not as much variety of food in the Dominican Republic as there is in Canada, the US. And it's not as easy to find really good, like gourmet type food or very good restaurants, but they are there now. And there's, for instance, I don't go to them because I have to pay the same as I'd pay in Canada, and that's kind of, I'm not really, I don't pay that much. It's too expensive. Like there's an excellent restaurants, probably 15 excellent restaurants within 10 minutes drive of where I live.
Okay.
I've been to one or two. And people tell me the others are all really, really great. But, I can go in town and for instance, 600 pesos or less, I can have a beer, a filet mignon, with vegetables, rice, salad and tip included, 600 pesos. Okay.
And
Which is
how much is that American?
$12.
Okay.
And that's a large beer. Large beer there is basically 2 beers. Whereas if I go to, and it'll be better food at these better restaurants, no question, and better, like more upscale environment and all the rest of that stuff that you're accustomed to in Canada, the US. But you're going to pay comparable Canada, US prices in those restaurants.
Do they have drug problems there?
Oh yeah.
What are the, say, for instance, in the US and Canada, we have big problems with methamphetamine and sometimes crack cocaine. What are the drugs that create problems there in the DR?
Well, I only know that there are drug problems there because I know I've seen people who use drugs, and I'm told they use drugs, and they tell me. I haven't seen what I would call a problem for me.
Right.
It hasn't impacted me, not even slightly. But I've heard that there's a lot of drugs in the Dominican Republic. And the big one I've heard about is cocaine. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen anybody use it, but I know it's there and I know people are using it. So on that side of it, it's no different than here. I know it's here. In fact, right outside here on the corner, some young kids come and do drug deals across the street here in Canada, but it still doesn't affect me.
Right.
Not really.
Okay,
I see it.
You're not in a combat zone for
Oh God, no.
That sort of thing.
It's not like Puerto Rico, eh? Puerto Rico, I don't know if you've been to Puerto Rico, but it's more dangerous. Puerto Rico is a much more dangerous country, I think.
Okay. Well, moving on to something that I know that people will want me to ask you, let's talk about the women of the Dominican Republic. And
Sure.
First, before we get all the way to the really juicy stuff, compared to the US and Canada, where, let's face it, as we all know, relationships between men and women are not going very well. They're quite poor, as a matter of fact, about as poor as you can get. And I'm going to guess that for a lot of people who are watching this and contemplating a move to another country, the relationships between men and women is at the root of a lot of that. They're tired of Western women. They're tired of Western bullshit with women. They're tired of the expectations on men, and they want something different. Primarily, I think a lot of men go to other countries because they want to experience a culture where women still respect men a little bit. And so with that in mind, what is the relationship, generally speaking, like between men and women there?
Well, it's an excellent question, and it does strike to the heart of just about every human being's quality of life. I mean, it's very, very difficult not to have good, close, and intimate relationships. That's a difficult way to live. And a lot of what you'll see, what I've seen, I've met, and I know at least 15 or 20 couples, mixed, like Dominican gringo couples in the Dominican Republic now. And their relationships, I can describe, share a lot of similarities as any man-woman relationship would anywhere in the world. They have the same issues that come up. There is a difference, though, is that it's less risky for men there, I think. And when I say less risky, when things go wrong, you're not facing the end of your life and half of your salary gone and all the rest of that kind of stuff. But relationships do fall apart as well. I have a friend there who's going through a divorce right now. And he's married to a Dominican woman, and they have a child. And, he has a house there with her, and he's going to lose half his house and half his stuff. Now they've been together 20 years or something like that. Now, and I know some of the details, and I'm not really, in case they do watch this, I don't want to get into the
Well, of
details of this
course.
specific relation or problem. But that's a similar thing that you would find here. One of the other thing that you would find that is, especially if a man gets involved with, say, a like girlfriend or live in or married to a poorer woman, which most people in Dominican Republic will be poorer than the men who go down there from the West. There is an expectation that you will provide for her. And that means also not only providing her, feeding her, and having the apartment for her to live with you in, but giving her some spending money.
Okay.
People kind of refer to it as a girlfriend allowance there.
Okay, that's an interesting way to put it.
It is. Now, before people start to say, "Oh, well, it's just as bad as the West," I'll tell you, I think that everywhere in the world, no matter what the situation, women expect men to be giving them things. They expect to receive. They don't expect to provide.
And if there was a place that wasn't like that, if there was a place where women gave away sex and never had an expectation of men to do anything for them, you would know it, because every last fucking man on the planet would live there as of
Right.
right now.
I think that's something that men just have to understand, that for whatever
Well,
reason.
they could go the route. There's another route to go, which this is a good segue into that. Typically, as somebody, I lived in Korea for 13 months, and I traveled the world in a lot of places and lived. And at the time I was in Korea in the mid 70s, it wasn't near as affluent a nation as it is now. It was a very poor nation when I was there. That meant that prostitution was part of the culture. And I understand that in most countries that are not affluent, prostitution is a big part of the culture. I imagine that the DR is no exception to that. So I will get directly to what I know people want me to ask you. How much do they cost, and how good looking are they?
Sure. First, before I answer that question, I do want to say that the girlfriend allowance that I've heard about, the baseline, which people throw these numbers, and people talk down there. You won't have to be there more than a week before you'll find out some of this information. Even if you're just sitting in a bar having a beer, you're going to hear people talking about this stuff beside you. Okay. The girlfriend allowance is what I'm told, and I think is a fairly reasonable kind of ballpark number, is about 1,500 pesos a week. 1,500 pesos is $30 American. Okay. And that's her spending money. But this is what people also say too. And people who
can't even keep gas in my car.
Yeah. But here's what also, this is very common, and I've heard this from a lot of sources, that Dominican women are very appreciative if you treat them reasonably. Apparently, she will cook, she will clean, she will do your laundry, she will be affectionate. She's very happy she'll be living if she's living with a gringo, she'll be living in a better circumstances, unless she's like middle class, upper class, which all the rules change there. The rules all change, apparently, when you get involved with a middle or upper class. It becomes more similar to here.
Okay.
But the typical Dominican woman is really, when she's happy in a relationship, she's very pleasant and very hardworking, is the experience I'm seeing, and very supportive of the man. And in that traditional man-woman thing, you might have in your mind an image of old school man and wife kind of really have each other's back, There is a significant amount of that there that I've seen. Now, to get back to the prostitution issue, you can't go to the Dominican Republic and not see prostitution. It is extremely common. And mostly you'll see it in the traditionally tourist towns.
Right.
So Puerto Plata and Punta Cana. Punta Cana, it will be there for sure, and around Santo Domingo. And you'll see it pretty much everywhere in the country, but this is where it'll be right in your face, I mean, you walk out of a beach bar in Sosua, for instance, and you're going to have to beat them off with a stick. I'm joking, of course, but they're right there, and they're aggressive. Oh,
Okay.
the price. I do know about the prices. What's very common here, and this is that people have said, is that never bring them a Dominican prostitute back to your apartment. Never. Several reasons. Some are obvious. Like one is that some of them are very accomplished thieves. Okay. Now, maybe you wouldn't want anything to do with that kind of woman anyways. You probably should stay away from a thieving prostitute, because you know damn well that they're also connected to some of the worst men in the town, and they will call on those guys. And I've heard them that they case out a place. They go back with a gringo to his apartment. They're casing it, and they're not casing it for them. They're casing it for some guys who are a lot worse than her.
Right.
You know, they see something, they've assess it up, and they see it's worthwhile. I wouldn't want to be in that position.
I hope you're listening, guys, if you go down there.
Yeah, don't. And here's the other thing. This is very, very, very common there. All over the place, there are these things they call cabanas. I don't know if you've heard the term before.
Yeah.
But these are hotel rooms by the hour. And I haven't yet been in one, but I do want to go in and see what they're all like. But I know several guys that have gone in them, and everybody says they're spotlessly clean. They are comfortable. They are private. You drive in through a gate, it's all secured off, and you actually drive your car right into the room. This garage door goes up and closes behind your car, and you do all your thing in there. And there's a slide, two-way slide thing for private in the wall, and you can order beer or food or whatever, and they put it in the window, and you slide it. And you never see anybody or any hands or anything. It just slides, and you open your side, and there's what you wanted. And apparently, I don't know how they order it. Like maybe a touch screen or something in these rooms. I don't know exactly what it is, but I got to go see this. But anyways, they are. What was the guy telling me? I know a guy who's been to quite a few of them. We were actually playing pool. This group of guys, right, in this pub. And of course, the pub has no walls. This one is open air ones, but they've got a couple pool tables there. It's really blast. We're playing pool, and the music is going, and I'm having my beers. And I say, well, where's that other guy gone? And the guy, he wouldn't answer me. He just started smiling. I said, okay. Did he leave? He go home? He says, no, he went to a cabana. I had seen him talking with a young woman there, and and he looked friendly. And then all of a sudden, I turn around, he's gone. And there's a cabana across the street. And so when he got back and I found out about this, I asked him all the prices, what he paid, all the rest of that stuff. And I saw the girl. She's a nice looking girl. And I think, and he's a guy, he's had girlfriends there, and he decided he didn't want all the complications of girlfriends. So he just, what can I say? He uses the prostitutes when he feels for it. And he never brings anybody to his apartment anymore. He'd been through that route, and he didn't want any more of that anymore. So anyways, he came back, and I said, okay, how much is this cabana? I think what he said was about 800 pesos, which is about 16 American, $16 American. The guy has to pay the cabana. Everything that goes on with the girls, and I've heard guys that say the girls gone in there with them for nothing. Okay. Just because the guys probably bought her a few beers and will buy her some more beers and stuff like that, and the future kind of things, or whatever relationship they have. I don't know. But he paid that girl, I think, 1,200 pesos. So the whole price came out to 2,000 pesos, which is 40 American dollars. And that was a private room. He was gone at least an hour. And so probably if you stayed 2 hours and had a beer with her and enjoyed yourself, you'd be more. Obviously, you got to pay by the hour in these places. So $40.
Okay.
And there's no risk. Nobody knows where you live.
And the cabana isn't a place where you have all your property. So
you have nothing there, right?
Yep.
They can't case you out. They can't size you up. They can't know where you live. Now, that's if you want to keep that level of security. That's a way to do it. But Obviously, I haven't tried that, but like I wouldn't write off. Like I'm not moralizing on here, and I wouldn't write that out of my future that I wouldn't go down
Right.
that road.
Of
You know,
course.
because it's an option. I keep at this point in my life, I say you got to keep every option open. I don't. There's a reason it's there and it works for some people at some times in their lives, some for lots of their lives, some for not. Um, but I think for me, I'd be more comfortable with a regular relationship. I just like getting to know people.
Right.
And
Yeah, and again, and neither one of us are here to pass judgments on any of this. I mean, it's just I want these guys to know the options. It's a conversation that comes up a lot, and I thought, what are we going to do except try to bring guys the straight information on these different places? That's why, and I'm going to take this opportunity to make an appeal to anyone watching. If you live in a country other than the U.S., Canada, or what we call the Western shitholes of feminism. If you live somewhere around the world, if you're an expat somewhere that happens to stumble on this, please contact me through either one of the websites. There's links in the low bar there in the description area. And if you're willing to come on and talk about where you live, what it's like, I would like to do the tour of a lot of places and bring these talks to guys so they can decide what they want. Because I know there's a lot of men right now that are just as happy as they can be to deal with prostitutes so that they don't have to deal with a woman. And it's all a matter of taste. I'm more of a guy that prefers to know somebody myself. I never was well, I can't say never, but I'm not of the prostitution bend at all. But I think it's a great option for a lot of guys. Let's move on for a moment
before we do move on, I do
Sure.
want to throw a couple of things out there that I
By all
found
means.
interesting down there, and the whole sexual life piece of the pie. When I say that the go down the prostitution route, there are guys down there that have known some of the prostitutes and go with them regularly for years. They actually know them, get to know them. They'll see them at the same bars, the same prostitutes, and they've had they have a relationship, but it's an understanding relationship. They get to know each other a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You can't call it, maybe you could look at it like a open relationship or whatever like that. But it is a prostitute client kind of relationship, but it's qualitatively different than you see you just see this girl, you pay her the money and you have sex and you walk away and never see each other again. There's a lot of kind of regular client type relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and that works out quite well for guys, and people are quite open about this. And the other thing that I've noticed too is that non-prostitute women and family people, they don't look as stigma-like. They don't put a stigma on prostitute girls like you would see here in North America. There isn't this giant, need for secrecy about it because there isn't this giant stigma.
I had the same situation when I was in Korea. I was a young soldier there, very young, and had a live-in girlfriend that I paid a salary. And these girls were actually held in pretty high regard in their community. It was a poor nation, and they were providing money for their families by doing this work, by living in and cooking and cleaning and providing sex and drawing baths and everything else you could imagine. It was really a pretty sweet arrangement. Of course, most of them were looking to go to the big PX when your tour was done and you were going back stateside. And so there was always this game of dodging that.
Yeah. Another thing to be aware of is that if the guy is in like a girlfriend or live-in relationship with the girl, if she has a toothache, who do you think's paying for that? You're
Sure.
gonna have to pay for a dentist. You can't just ignore her legitimate needs. The guy's gonna have to buck up for that, or at the least, you're not going to have a very friendly relationship with a woman that has a toothache and
Well,
you're
and
not
you look
paying.
at it like you're providing medical insurance for an employee. That's just part of the benefit package that you're providing.
It
So you
is
have
an
that
expectation. And
and entanglement.
if they have some family member that suddenly has a huge health issue, you'd be under a lot of pressure to pay for that as well, you know.
Okay.
And that's all. That is no different than here, okay, in Canada. Like if you're a family member of yours in Canada, okay, suddenly has some emergency, the expectation is on relatives to help them out of that, and you're going to be paying for that, and you'll be there too. Now, the overriding thing is that almost everything is a lot cheaper there
Right.
to get done. For instance, you guys probably seen my missing tooth here. It's expensive as hell. I'm not fixing it here in Canada because it's just too damn expensive. It's $3,000 to $5,000 or so to put a new tooth in there, and that's just, if I have $3,000 extra, I'm going to get a camera, not a tooth.
Well, you could probably get that done in the DR if you wanted to.
And I have looked into it. And the first person I went to see, the dentist I went to see, they examined it and gave me some price, and I didn't pay anything for that visit. They just looked, and I can get the whole thing done. I'm trying to remember the price now. I think it would be a little under 1,000 Canadian, so roughly about a third the price of here.
Sure.
Maybe a little less
even.
Yeah.
Because a single tooth replacement, I know, can go from $4,000 to $6,000 in the U.S. in U.S. dollars. It's pricey to get that done. Let's go ahead and move on, though, because I think we want to wrap this up before long. What are some of the things, other things? I mean, we addressed the women, we addressed the cost of living, the culture, and a lot of things, and you provided a lot of great answers. I appreciate it. What is there to do for other entertainment value? Like, I'm sure there's, parasailing, stuff like that goes on, fishing. What are some of the things that you do while you're in DR if you want to go out and, get outside, get some exercise and have some fun?
That is really the $1 million question. That's an excellent question. And a big mistake that some guys make when they go to the DR, and I see it there, is they don't come with prepared to pursue their interests and hobbies. And then they end up like spending all of their time, say, in a beach bars or something. And after a few months of that, you're going to be pretty strung out, So you better, like, if you're going to enjoy it, you want to bring your life with you, not like the things you love to do. You want to set yourself up to do it, but not everything is available there, but a lot of stuff is, and some stuff that's not available where I am. For instance, for me, getting into off-road motorcycling is a blast. I mean, that is like a million miles an hour of entertainment for me, and I love it. I love riding the motorcycle. I love just the fact that I can go out in my shorts and just like I am sitting here right now and get on my motorcycle and go somewhere. I don't have to worry about it, and it's cheap. Like you don't have to pay insurance. Well, you do, but it's useless insurance, and it costs like 60 pesos a year, which is $1. There's no license fees. You don't need a motorcycle license. You can ride it without the motorcycle license. There's a whole host of things like that that makes it cheap. But that's entertainment to me. I also bring, of course, my camera gear. The last time I went down, I had 3 computers with me. So I want to make sure you have a good, solid internet connection, and you can find it, although there's problems at times. And some places have more power outages than others. I'm bringing, for this winter, I plan to bring an electric keyboard with me so I can practice music, piano and stuff. And because that gives me some pleasure in the day, an hour or so when I feel like kind of zoning out to that thing. So I would say, and kite surfing. If you're an athletic kind of guy, kite surfing is huge there. And Kite Beach, I think it's Kite Beach, or anyways, in Cabarete, there's a couple of kite beaches. It's rated as one of or the best kite surfing areas in the world. For whatever reason that makes it kite surfing, I haven't gone out and tried that, although I would like to. It's a little expensive. I think you have to pay about $1,500 or $2,000 for the kite get up, the board and the kite and all the rest of that. And then you probably should take some lessons because it's a pretty dangerous sport. And you do need to be fairly fit, to do
I
that.
bet.
Other things, there's a lot of cycling. I've seen cyclists and mountain bike cyclists. There's good hiking. There's like charities that one person I knew was involved in this kind of Save the Dogs kind of a charity where it's kind of rescue dogs, There's church type groups and that do charity work and building houses for like the super needy, stuff like that. Any of your hobbies that you do right now, you should be able to do them there. There's lots of gyms. I'm a member at or when I'm there, I buy a monthly membership at the Golf and Country Club in Costanbar, which again it's like 3-4 minutes by motorcycle. It's still in the same little community. And there's a 9-hole golf course and a swimming pool that's about 20 meters long. So it's long enough to get exercise in.
Good sized pool.
Yeah. I prefer 25 meters, but 20 meters is close enough. And there's a full gym there for doing weights and stuff. So all of those things, I mean, you can have the same activities in general that you would have in the US or Canada or most of the world. Now, often, like for instance, the gym and the pools, these things are not quite at the kind of world-class level you'd find in Canada, the US, right? Like some of the stuff will be kind of old and overused, but it gets the job done. The pool gets the job done. And I'm not a golfer, but I did go golfing once with some buddies because guy had a spare set of golf clubs and, I wanted to go out with them. So we went around the course and, golf just doesn't appeal to me. But if you're a
probably
golfer,
not a golf is probably never going to be a real popular thing with the red pill crowd. So,
yeah.
and I don't think that old gym equipment will bother them. Well, that's been real informative. I want to wrap it up, but I want to ask you before we do, is there anything that I haven't asked you about the Dominican Republic that you would want to tell anybody who was looking for a place to maybe become an expat or part-time expat, about what they should know about the DR before they come even the first time to visit and take a look?
Oh, even the first time? Keep an open mind, You don't come to a place like this if you're going to expect things to be basically transplanted your culture there, and you're going to be really unhappy. It's just not the same, and it's hard to put your finger on exactly what it is. It's not the same, but even if you're out with a bunch of gringos or expats together, and me and 4 or 5 other guys all have these off-road motorcycles, and we go on little tours, little road. Most of the time it's a day tour, and it's real easy, casual. We just get on the bikes about 11 in the morning, and we're back by about 4 in the afternoon or 5. Sometimes a little later, sometimes a little earlier. But even if you're surrounded by them, you go places, you're going to feel the difference of that culture and the difference of the expectations. And people are not going to respond to you with the same kind of culturally way, even in restaurants and bars, and that you would get responded to back home. So if you're not comfortable with that change difference, that's always going to be there with you, Now, on the other side that you touched on is that for any place like this, the Dominican Republic's really cheap to visit from North America. So go down 2-3 times start with a week, go down for 2 weeks another time, go down for a month another time, and get the feel of it for yourself and see if it appeals to you. There was something else I wanted to say. It's escaping me, but I found when it came to my mind, it was fairly important. Now I can't remember it.
Of course. That's how it works when you start getting this gray stuff.
Yeah.
And even before then.
Yeah. Well, um, it's to me, it's a lot freer feeling down there, and that's a huge value to me. Um, what can I say?
I know what you were going to say. You were going to tell people how to support Studio Brule. Uh,
Yeah.
Steve produces the Fiamingo Files with Janice Fiamingo, some of the best talks on men's issues, on the men's movement, on red pill culture, on anti-feminism that you'll ever get a hold of. And he's been doing it for quite a while. How many episodes are you guys into this now?
I think it's 85 or 86 episodes.
Wow, 85, 86 episodes. So visit him at patreon.com/.
Studio Brule.
Studio Brule. And you can also visit me on Patreon at patreon.com/Paul Elam to support my work. We're at this grind. It's a hard grind, but it's a fun grind. And we both very much appreciate your support for getting behind our projects. With
I
that,
want to throw one other thing out there for the guys. And if there's one other thing that I would say is that don't be afraid to go and see for yourself at places, to try something different. And this is kind of what is spurring me, is that if you're not happy or you're not welcome where you are, and that could be due to a bad relationship, or you're living with somebody, or a bad marriage, or whatever, don't stay. Don't stay where you're not wanted. It's better to move even if you don't know where you're moving to when you leave. I think it's better to move from a bad place, even if you don't know what the future holds.
I can't argue against that. I think that's sage advice for everyone. And with that, I'm going to wrap this up and say thank you, Steve, for giving us the 411 on the DR. And hopefully this helps guys that are looking or considering at least going somewhere else to call home, to plant their roots for a little while and to get a change from what I like to call shithole countries of United States and Canada where it concerns feminism. With that, going to wish everybody a good night. Hope you've enjoyed, even if you haven't, and we'll see you next time.